Good morning, good evening, and welcome to War Thunder. Today, we're gonna walk through some tips and lesser known tactics I've picked up in my nearly 4,000 hours of playing this game, with most of the time being spent in ground realistic battles. But the way to get better is just to play the game. Map knowledge, knowing your tanks and how to kill them, knowing your own tank, and being aware of your surroundings, watching the minimap, and so on. These tips are more or less for new players, but experienced players might find something new too. But with that out of the way, let's get started with our first tip. Now, my first tip might seem very obvious, but if you're new to the game, this will be very useful for you. That is, use your binoculars and your binocular view. The word on your tip screen does not lie. Use your binoculars. They are more effective on some maps than others, but they will always be useful. With binoculars, you're able to scan the map for targets, scout enemies if you're a light tank, and you will just get a better sense of how the battle is progressing. This will touch on another tip as well, which is position or a battle position. Now I have my tank set up in a battle position. The purpose of a battle position is to be in cover, but still having vision on the enemies you want to eliminate. And binoculars are a vital part of this, since they help you identify targets, lay your gun, range find, and you're able to do this all in cover. And when you're ready, just place your reticle on the tank, drive up and fire. This will bring us to our next tip, which is to turn off grass in tank sites. If you want to be a relatively competitive player, this is something you need to turn off. This setting just removes grass when you're in the tank site. This will also help you when you're, for example, fighting on a ridgeline, since you can see targets much earlier since your view is not obstructed by any grass. This is what it looks like when you have this setting on. As you can see, it's much harder to identify any targets. And if switch is off, you can see we have a much clearer view and we're able to find the targets much quicker and easier. Now, the next tip also ties in to the previous two. That is third person aiming. This tip will help you win one-on-one fights with very aggressive players. So, just imagine this tank is coming directly towards me and is going to attempt to take out my breach. The idea is quite simple. You place your larger reticle on the target like this, pay attention to the smaller reticle, and start driving up. Once the smaller reticle snaps into place, just fire, and the target is eliminated. This will also work in slightly larger distances if you have some good eyes. I will show you again. And this also helps me get the first shot off almost every time. Now, the next tip is to not take a full load of ammunition into battle. This has to be one of the most common mistakes I see players make when I'm playing. It happens more in lower tiers, but it still occurs in high tiers, mostly with premium players. So, why do you want to take limited ammunition into battle? This has all to do with survivability. You want to minimize the risk of you getting hit in the ammunition, which is always a insta-kill. As you can see, this Tiger 1 has the ammunition stored all over, which makes it really easy to ammo rack. Now, I can spend all video talking about specific vehicles and how much ammunition you should bring, but the general rule is around the 20 rounds. But this is something that you're gonna have to experience with each vehicle, and it will often change over time as you play the game. Some vehicles you maybe only need 10 or 15 rounds, while some others you maybe need up to 30 or 40 rounds. It all depends on you and the vehicle. The next tip is also something that has to do with ammunition, and that is taking the right sort of ammunition. I've seen this many times, mostly with high tier premium players, with them running around with Heat FS instead of APFSDS or APDS. And this is understandable, since they technically have more penetration. So a newer player might think that they are the best option, but they are not. Always try to bring a kinetic penetrator such as APFSDS, APDS, or even APHE or some other AP round. There are some battle ratings where HeatFS shells are the best option. If you're not convinced, here are some examples. Number 1. AP shells are not affected as much by explosive reactive armor as chemical shells. As I show here, a APDS shell will go straight through this T90, but a HeatFS shell will be eaten up by the ERA. Number 2. AP shells can go through fences, trees, and other destructible terrain. And number 3. Kinetic penetrators such as APDS are much higher velocity than chemical rounds, which are much slower. This makes it easier to hit targets farther away. Now, the next tip is regarding audio cues and sound. As you know, audio cues and sound are very important to gameplay. It helps you identify enemy targets and where they are coming from. You can even know what tank they are. So I would first off recommend you putting your own engine sound to the lowest and other players' engine volume to the highest. Then you can mix around like how you want it. But these two are the most important. Turn your own engine sound to the lowest, because you don't need to hear your own engine sound, and other engine player sounds to the highest. Next tip, a red breach is a dead breach. Tank gun breachers are not only disabled when they are blacked out. There technically is a chance to fire when you have a red breach, but the chances of that are so incredibly low. You can take the gamble and win 99% of the time. So, pay close attention to the X-ray view and what it's showing. That can make the difference between a won and a lost engagement. Our next step is to upgrade and train your crew and upgrade your crew skills. Crew skills are a incredibly important thing to perform well in game. They can basically improve every aspect of your vehicle, be it reload speed, range finding, tank driving, or even repair time. Many newer players completely forget to use your crew points to train crew. And my final tip for this video, and maybe the most important one of all, is patience. Be patient. Everything goes back to patience. All of my best moments are because I am patient. This applies to aiming, positioning, and everything else you can think of. That is the end of the video. Thank you for sticking all the way through. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. As always, there will be more content to come about War Thunder. Until next time, take care.